Hey, I would love to talk to you parents for just a minute. Our CCV summer camp season is right around the corner. Our kids camp is full and registration's closed, but there's still some spots for our high school camp and our junior high camp, but registration closes Monday night. And so I want to look at you parents and I want to challenge you with something. If you've not signed up, a junior high or high school student for camp yet, I don't think there's anything you could do this summer for them that's more important or impactful than getting them to camp. Listen, my life was transformed at a camp when I was a student, and we want that for everyone. So I want to challenge you to sign your students up. You can go to this QR code, just grab this QR code, or you can go on our website. And if finances is an issue, listen, we have subsidies. We subsidize the price already, but we also have scholarships. And get this year, if you're a part of a foster family, or if you're a foster child, you go for free because of a really generous donation by someone, which is just an incredible thing for our church. So want to challenge you, get them signed up. This weekend, I was scheduled to preach at CCV, and I was really excited about the message this weekend. But then my really good friend, John Maxwell, called me and said, I can come to CCV this weekend. So I asked my wife, Jamie, would you rather hear me preach or John Maxwell preach? I'm really happy to announce this weekend our guest speaker, John Maxwell, okay? Yeah, he's gonna be awesome. If you don't know who John Maxwell is, wake up. Like, where have you been? You should. He is a #1 best-selling New York Times author. He sold over 34 million books. Think about that. He's a speaker. He speaks all across the world. And get this, he is the #1 rated leadership expert in the world today. Most importantly to me, though, is this. He is a deeply committed follower of Jesus. And he's going to rock our worlds today. I picked up my first John Maxwell leadership book over 25 years ago and just devoured it. And I have several on my shelf today. But years ago, John Maxwell agreed to be my personal mentor. And I have pages and pages of notes from our time together. And I would just say this, no one's impacted my leadership journey more than him. And this weekend, he has a message for our church that I think may be one of the most important messages we will hear as a church all year long. It's based on a book you'll hear about that he's just released called High Road Leadership. We'll tell you after the service how you can pick this book up at a price that you will get nowhere else. He's a once-in-a-century leader. And I hope right now you can help me give a huge CCV welcome to my friend and mentor, John Maxwell. Let's give it up. Come on. Come on. Give it up for him.
Love you, man. Hey, so much. Thank you. Really love you. So proud of you. Really proud of you. Thank you. Thank you. You may be seated. In fact, I'm going to sit down myself, huh? Let's get acquainted. What do you say? My name is John, and I'm your friend. On the count of 3, give me your name. 1, 2, 3. Nice to meet you. Well, you know how blessed you are to be a part of this incredible congregation. In fact, hi to all of the 17 different locations throughout the Phoenix area. But I'm so proud of Ashley and his team and their leadership. I understand leadership quite well, and I have the privilege of being with a lot of leaders. And I think you already know this. You are incredibly blessed with great leadership in this congregation. They're just great leadership. And so it's good to be here. There is no place like this place anywhere near this place. So this must be the place, huh? When I was in my 20s, I had no intention to ever write a book. I loved reading, but I never thought about writing or ever felt like this is something I should do. But I had a mentor, Les Parrott, and he'd written 6 books. One day we were having lunch, and I asked him, I said, Les, why do you write books? He said, I write books to extend my influence beyond my human touch. I want to be able to influence more people in a positive way, and I do it through books. And I remember leaning across the lunch table to him and saying, I'm going to start writing books, okay? And that's how I started. And my first book was, it was called Think on These Things, and honestly, it wasn't very good. There wasn't anything to think on. In fact, I keep asking the publisher to kill it. I mean, just say, could you bury that book? And now, because I've written a lot of books, they won't let it go. So I had a lady the other day come up to me and bring the book to me, and she said, "This is your first book?" And I said, "Oh, I know, I know." And she said, "I love this book." I said, You do? You love this book?" And you got to understand, it was about 120 pages, and I have 30 chapters, okay? 33 chapters. 33 chapters. 3 pages a chapter, basically, is what, okay. I said, "What do you love about the book?" She said, "The short chapters." And then she said, "How did you think about writing those short chapters?" And I said, "I wrote those short chapters because I couldn't think, lady." But now I've written, over the years, 90 books, which is not really a big deal. You just have to be old to write 90 books. But the book that High Road Leadership that I actually talked about just briefly for a moment ago, I felt very called to write it because the time that we live in today, we're seeing a lot of leadership, what I would call low road behavior. And we can do better than this. Everyone deserves to be led well. And I travel extensively around the world, and I go to many places where people aren't being led well. And I wrote the book because we're coming up pretty soon. We're going to have a political convention, and we're getting ready for an election year in America. And I'm very concerned. I feel that we've lost our way with values. But it's okay. It's okay because today I'm going to give you an answer, and you're part of that answer of how we can make this country what it really needs to be again, and hopefully help people and help the people in our community. So I'm going to talk about Jesus, the High Road Leader, and it comes out of my book, High Road Leadership, with the subtitle, Bringing People Together in a World That Divides. And so the book is 12 chapters, and by the way, these chapters are more than 3 pages long, okay? I've improved over the years, okay? And what's so beautiful about these 12 chapters is each chapter is a picture and the characteristic of what does a high road, not only leader look like, what does a high road liver, a person that lives, what do they look like? And I'm going to just take a moment, and I'm going to show them to you right now, and just look at these beautiful characteristics of high road leaders. So let's go. High road leaders, first of all, bring people together. Second thing they do is they value all people. They acknowledge their humanness. Fourth thing they do is they do the right things for the right reasons. And then they give more than they take. They develop emotional capacity. The next thing that they do is so important is they place people above their own agenda. In other words, that it's all about servant leadership there. And then they, not only that, but they embrace authenticity. I don't think people want a perfect leader, but they would sure like to have a leader that is real and authentic. They embrace authenticity. They take accountability for their actions. They live by the bigger picture. They don't keep score. And they desire the best for others. Now, when you look at these characteristics of high road leaders, first of all, I sat with my 5 grandchildren the other day, and I shared with them, I'm going to mentor you through this book. We're going to take a chapter every couple of weeks. And the reason I want to do this, my grandchildren are from 17 to 23, is that the younger generation hasn't seen a lot of high road leadership. They've seen a lot of low road leadership. They haven't really seen these characteristics, and I want to make sure my grandchildren, again, understand really what high road living, what high road leadership is all about. This is a book, if you have a business, this is a book on leadership culture. This is what you want to sit down with your team and say, this is what we want to be. I was just a week ago, today's Saturday, a week ago yesterday, Friday, I was in Cambodia, and I was with the Prime Minister and spent a half a day with him and his cabinet, and we were talking about values. And he brought out my book. I wrote a book many years ago on the 21 qualities of a leader. He said, I bought this book 20 years ago. I've read it 3 times. And he said, you taught me good values as a leader, to put my people first. And that's what this book is all about, putting people first. Now, everything I write about, even though I write mainly to a secular audience, everything I write about in leadership is all biblically based. Everything I, in fact, in the John Maxwell Leadership Bible, when I sign it for people, if I have time, I write in it, everything I know about leadership I learned from this book, because the Bible it's the foundation of all truth. And so everything I write about in leadership, even if it's in the secular world, it's all biblically based. I can remember I was speaking to a largest broker company in the world, very secular, and after teaching all day, one of the senior VPs raised his hand and he said, "John," he said, "your leadership material," he said, it's fresh, it's very different. He said, where did you get your material?" And I smiled and I said, you don't want to know. And as soon as I said, "You don't want to know," he said, no, I really do want to know. He said, "It's just so different. Where did you get your leadership material?" And I said, "You need to trust me. My name's John. I'm your friend." I said, you don't want to know. And of course, the more that you tell people they don't want to know, the more they want to know. And so now they're like all the hands, "Come on, where'd you get your leadership material?" I said, "Well, I'm going to tell you, but when I tell you, you're going to be disappointed." I said, "Everything I taught you today is from the Bible." And they just kind of collectively groaned and went, "Oh." And I said, "I told you didn't want to know. Again, my name's John. I'm your friend." And I said, "At 6:30 tonight, you have a cocktail hour. I'll be down in the corner. If you ever had a question about God, if you just come, I'll do my best to answer the question for you." And from 6:30 to 7:30, the line never stopped. People are very hungry. What I've discovered in my world is people are very hungry for God. The challenge is they have a wrong picture of God. And we're going to talk tonight about this picture that we need to have, which is about good values. And I'm going to take Jesus now, the High Road Leadership book, the 12 Distinctives. Again, take it, use it for your mentoring in your business or for your children or grandchildren or whatever. But now, if you'll allow me, I'm going to take 2 of the 12 qualities and characteristics, and I'm going to take them out of Jesus' life, okay? And let me start with the passage in Matthew 5. Let's look together on the screen. Jesus is talking. He says, "Let me tell you why you're here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors on this earth. And if you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and will end up in the garbage." Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this. As public as the city on a hill, and if I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. And now that I put you there on a hilltop on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. Notice this last phrase. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. So Jesus tells us what we're to be. People come to me all the time. You say, "Oh, I wonder what I should do." Well, Jesus says we should shine the light, and we should be salt and light. Salt makes things better. Light makes things brighter. In other words, we're to have a positive influence upon our culture. In other words, as Christians, you just want to go out and shake the salt, okay? And turn on the light. And so many Christians, instead of turning on the light, we're cursing the darkness. And that doesn't help at all. Okay, shake the salt, turn on the light. Would you look at your neighbor and say, "Shake the salt and turn on the light"? Go ahead and tell them that, would you? Just, yeah. Come on, shake that salt, turn on the light. How many of you remember the 1990s? We had a bracelet that had WWJD on it. Yeah, somebody really remembers, probably still have it on their wrist. Yeah, what would Jesus do? That was the question. It was a great reminder of us to, in making decisions, ask ourselves, well, what would Jesus do in this situation? Well, with High Road Leadership, we're going to change that bracelet a little bit. And instead of asking what would Jesus do, we're going to basically put one that says, "Do what Jesus did." Just do what he did. All we have to do is follow him. He's the example. All we have to do is get in the Gospels with him and begin to see how he related and connected with people as a high road leader. And it's my hope and prayer as I kind of walk you through this now that every one of us will have a greater desire than ever before to make sure that we get up on the high road. Now, let me just explain something about the high road. This is where we want to live. This is the kind of people we want to be. Now, we're not perfect people, so there are times when we perhaps we'll get a little bit low road or middle road. How many of you perhaps every once in a while maybe slip off the high road and get into the middle road? Look, can I see your hands? I'm just checking for honest people right now. If the person beside you didn't raise their hand, they're already low road. They're lying. In fact, in one of the chapters, you're going to love this, on the chapter on authenticity and high road leadership, I talk about the fact that we have within us an eagle, which we love the eagle, that makes us want to soar, you follow me, and go high. We all like the eagle, and we write songs about it. I believe I can fly, high. Yeah. Let me explain something. You can't, but that's okay. Flap those arms all you want to and run as far as you can. You're not going to fly, okay? Now, but we love the eagle. It soars. I believe I can fly. But we not only have an eagle in us that wants to go high, but we also have a hippopotamus in us. Yeah, we got a hippo. Yeah, we do. That person sitting beside you, they are an eagle most of the time, but they're a hippo sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And hippos like mud, don't they? Huh? They just like mud. How many of you have ever had a hippo day? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Now, what I'm just saying to you is we talk about high road leadership and look at the life of Jesus. There are times when hippo may have a few hours, but we make choices, we make decisions to get back on the high road. And there are two things that Jesus really did that was so high road, I don't want us to miss it in the Gospels. And number one, Jesus valued all people. Probably the most popular verse in the Scripture is John 3:16. It's on the screen. This is how much God loved the world. He gave his Son, his one and only Son, and this is why, so that no one need to be destroyed by believing in him. Anyone can have a whole and lasting life. God didn't go to all the trouble of sending his Son merely to point an accusing finger, telling the world how bad it was. He came to help, to put the world right again. God so loved the world. Not God just so loved the people I know, or God just loved the people that have good values. He loved the world. The world is everybody, all people. Look at your neighbor and say to your neighbor, God values you. Tell him that right now, would you? God values you. That's good. Look at your neighbor and say to them, God values me. Go ahead and tell them that. Now wait a minute before we go on. The volume was much higher on God values me. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of like, God values you. Yeah. Oh, God values me. Oh, yes. Here, okay. Of course he does. He values you. Look at your neighbor and says, God values people I don't know. Go ahead and tell them that. God. Oh, one more time. Look at your neighbor and say, God values people I don't like. Yeah, that's a stopper, isn't it, huh? Boy, I was doing good teaching until then, wasn't I? Huh? Then all of a sudden, I kind of just messed us up with God values people I don't like. Wow. We're in trouble as Christ followers. Instead of building bridges, developing relationships with everyone, we become divisive. We've started building walls, and we're losing our salt and our light. We're falling into the culture of low-road livers that are part of any country, including ours. And we instead of being distinctively different and distinctively beautiful and distinctively attractive, it's just hard to find a Christian community lifting and loving unconditionally. We've just kind of fallen into middle low road kind of living. In politics, We've allowed our differences to become divisions. And differences, let me just say that there's nothing wrong with differences. In this auditorium, there are thousands of people watching online and in all the different locations throughout Phoenix. So we all have differences. There's nothing wrong with differences. We have food difference, preference. I mean, Margaret and I have been married for 55 years. And we have differences. Yeah, I don't know if you're clapping because we've been married 55 years or you're clapping because we have differences. I'm not really sure, but we have differences. Come on, talk to me. You have differences with your spouse. We don't agree on everything. In fact, there are some things we don't even talk about. You know what I mean? Or you'd say, why don't you talk about it? It's because there's no use talking about it. And it's okay. Now, it's not like she's wrong and I'm right or I'm right. No, we're not having, see, differences, that's normal. There's nothing wrong with having differences as far as views about politics or something. There's nothing wrong with differences at all. But let me say, division is a choice. And we have chosen to become divisive. And we have chosen to put ourselves on one side and point to the others. And let me tell you something. During this election year, the most important decision is not going to be who you vote for. The most important decision as Christians is how you behave. And I just heard one little faint hand over there. There was, don't force it. 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 Yeah, just. That just motivates me to no end. Listen to me very carefully. I'm much more concerned about our behavior. Are we going to be salt and light? Are we going to be distinctively beautiful and different? Or are we just going to live like lost people? How can we make people who don't have a relationship with God ever want to fall in love with God as long as we're as nasty as ever? I was preaching to a congregation the other day, and I was just saying very simply to them, honestly, I don't know if, I'm not even asking you to be saved. I'd just like you to be nice. Could you just be nice? Could you just be kind? Could you just have the fruit of the Spirit? Let's go back to Jesus. Jesus said, in the same way I loved you, love one another. This is how everyone will recognize that you're my disciples when they see the love that you have for each other. Wow. Our pastor at Christ Fellowship in South Florida so beautifully preached a message the other day, and I thought it was so appropriate. I'm going to use a little bit of it right now. And there are 3 points, and I don't want you to miss them because they're really good. The first point is that we are not only citizens of a country, we're citizens of heaven. I think we've forgotten about our citizenship of heaven. I think that we just got consumed with our citizenship here. So what did Paul talk about when he wrote to the church at Philippi? Their mind is set on earthly things, but our citizenship is in heaven. This is not our world. We're just passing through. The second point is we're not just citizens of heaven. We're ambassadors of Christ. When Paul wrote to the church at Corinth, he said, God has committed to us the message of reconciliation. We are therefore Christ ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. You see, when we're called ambassadors of the kingdom of heaven, when we're ambassadors of God, this is a very important role because an ambassador represents the leader or the nation where they come from. In fact, an ambassador doesn't share their point of view. They only share the point of view of the leaders and the nation. It's not what I think, it's what God thinks. Are my words like Jesus? Are my actions like him? You see, the world is filled with sin and darkness. That's low road living and low road leadership. But Jesus expects us to be salt and light. He expects us to be on that high road. And we're not only just to be ambassadors of Christ, we're chosen to do a very priestly work. Look what Peter said. But you're the ones chosen by God, chosen for the high calling of priestly work, chosen to be a holy people. Look at this. God's instruments to do his work and speak out for him, to tell others of the night and day difference he made for you. From nothing to something, from rejected to accepted. Friends, this world is not your home. So don't make yourselves cozy in it. Don't indulge your ego at the expense of your soul. Live an exemplary life in your neighborhood so that your actions will refute their prejudice and they'll be won over to God's side and be there to join in the celebration when he arrives. You see, our role as Christians is to help people connect with God. I have a lot of friends that don't know God because I live in a lost world, basically, and that's where most of my time is spent. So I have a lot of friends that don't know God, but they know me. And I want them to know me in such a beautiful way that sooner or later they'll want to know God. Well, is your life making people hungry to know God? Is it appealing? I was in New Mexico, and I was speaking to the top 100 educators in the public school movement. To make a long story very short, we've developed values curriculum that we've been using internationally for 13 years for millions and millions of students, preparing our way for the day when the door would open in America to have values curriculum, not before school, not after school, not praying around the flagpole Christian stuff, none of that. But have values curriculum in the classroom with math and with language. I mean, that they are studying values curriculum every day, and we're making some great headway in that. I wish I had time to really tell you some of the stories. I'm just going to tell you that by the end of the year, there'll be 1 million students in public schools that will be getting our values curriculum in the classroom, and in 5 years, 50 million students in public schools will be getting it. Yes, it's becoming absolutely contagious, but I can't stay there. I'm talking to the top 2 leading educators of every state, 50 states in the United States. And we're all day on values. They're doing a values table because we let the students do values table in the values curriculum. I'm talking to them about the importance of values in culture. They're doing Q&A on values. And one of the educators raised her hand and she said, John, one thing that bothers me is you talk about valuing us. And she said, you don't know me. You don't even know my name. Now, how can you value me when you don't know me? And I said, well, I have a real good answer for that, but I'm not sure I can give it to you. She said, well, why? I said, well, it's about my faith. And I don't want to put that on you. If you don't want me to, I don't have to tell you about that. It's okay. But I have a good answer for you, but if I answer it, I've got to talk to you about my faith, and I wouldn't want to impose that on you at all. And again, the more that you tell them that you wouldn't want to do that. And now they all got their hands there. No, talk about your faith. And I said, I'll be glad to. And then I said to them, the reason I can say I value you and I don't even know your name, I have never met you, is because I'm a Christ follower. And God created you in his image. God loves you so much. He values you so much. He gave you gifts so that you could be effective in your life. And I said, if God values you, then I can value you, even though I don't know you, because if he values you, that's all I need to know. I wish you could have been in that room. I wish you could have just felt the silence and the Holy Spirit beginning to work in the hearts of these beautiful people, most of them who have no relationship with God at all. And I was just getting to sow just a little bit of seed. Now, how important is it to value everyone? Again, look what Jesus said. When he talks about the greatest commandment, he said, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Very simple. Love God, love others. And when Jesus was on earth, he saw more in people than just their past. He was able to get beyond the past of people. In fact, look at Matthew, who was a tax collector, and he was despised by the Jewish people. And Jesus went up to Matthew and said, Matt, he said, I think I'd like you to be one of my disciples. And the religious community, they were so ticked. They hated that. They said, he's a sinner. What are you doing? And then Jesus even went out and ate with them that day. And they didn't like that either. And then Jesus said, you've got to understand, I didn't come to this world for people that are well. I came for sick people. I'm a doctor. I'm a shepherd that if one sheep is lost, I'll go look for that one lost sheep, really basically until I find. You see, when Jesus saw Matthew, he not only saw Matthew as he was and what he had done, but he saw a bigger picture of who Matthew could become. And Jesus saw more in people than their status. And when the attorney came to Jesus and he looked at Jesus and he said, who's my neighbor? Isn't it interesting when he asked who my neighbor is? Jesus took a Samaritan. Now, Samaritans were hated by the Jewish people. They had racial prejudice toward them, and they looked down on them. And now Jesus says, this is who your neighbor, and he's a good Samaritan. And he's bringing back a person that was beaten up, and it's a picture of restoration. In fact, think about it for a moment. You wouldn't restore an old car unless you saw value in it, and you wouldn't restore an old piece of furniture unless you saw value in it. And if we don't see value in lost people, I know that their lives are all messed up. I know their values aren't what our values are. I know that they're as opposite as they can be, but listen to me very carefully. If we're going to be like Jesus, we're going to value all people. Here's what I mean. If I see you hurting, I'll help you. If I see you as broken, I'll fix you. But if I see you as valuable, I'll serve you. Do you see the difference? When you're broken, I fix you. When you're hurting, I help you. I'm still the big guy. I'm still the Messiah. I came and I swept in there and I put your life back together. But the moment I see you as valuable, no longer do I do works that lord it over others. Now when I come to be with you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to serve you. You know, Jesus saw more in people than just what their sin was. When people brought the lady committing adultery, when they brought it before Jesus for him to kind of nod approval of her being stoned, basically what these, quote, religious people want to do, they wanted to write her out of the story. And Jesus said, no, I don't write people out of the story. I write people into the story. Jesus loved outsiders. Jesus loved lost people. Jesus valued them incredibly. And if we're going to be high road leaders like Jesus, we just value everyone. We just value all of them. I'm not saying that you have to agree with them. There's going to be a lot of differences, but we still love them unconditionally. We still value them. So I love the story of the pit. It's very simple. A man fell in a pit. And a subjective person came along and said, I feel for you down there. An objective person came along and said, it's logical that somebody would fall in the pit. The Pharisee said only bad people fall in the pit, and a news reporter wanted an exclusive story on his pit. The fundamentalist said, you deserve the pit. A realist said, wow, that's a pit. The IRS agent asked if he was paying taxes on the pit, and the county inspector asked if he had a permit to dig the pit. An evasive person came by and avoided the subject of the pit altogether. A self-pitying person said, you haven't seen anything till you've seen my pit. A charismatic said, just confess you're not in the pit. And an optimist said things could be worse. And a pessimist said things will get worse. And Jesus, seeing the man in the pit, reached down, took him by the hand, and lifted him out of the pit. That's what Jesus does. See, no matter how bad your situation is, Jesus loves you unconditionally. In fact, he's crazy about you. If he had a refrigerator, he'd have your picture on it, okay? I wrote a poem about Jesus, the high road leader, And I thought I would just share it with you this evening. High road leader in sandals of grace, acknowledging humanness, tears on his face, and doing what's right for reasons so pure, giving more than he took, love to assure, gathering people the good news to hear, placing them first, they came far and near. Forgiving so freely, he didn't keep score, and valuing all people gave him instant rapport, and living a life so authentic and real. Speaking words of great hope had such an appeal. Sharing his message with love on his face. High road leader in sandals of grace. That's our Jesus right there. That's our Jesus. Now let me just say, I'm just looking at the clock. In fact, I'm in trouble. I'm in minus time. Well, it's very appropriate that I would say this one, because this is the high road leader too. Jesus did not keep score or a clock. When you look at his interactions with Peter, let me just close this very briefly. Peter always kept score. Jesus never kept score. Peter even went to Jesus about how many times somebody should be forgiven. He said 7 times. He said 77. At the Last Supper, when Jesus said, you're going to fall away because of me, Peter says, well, I'm not going to fall away from you. These other guys, I can't depend on them at all, but you can depend on me. He fell away. He denied him 3 times. At the resurrection, the messengers told the women, he has risen, and go tell the disciples and Peter. God wanted to make sure that Peter was included because he knew that Peter was so discouraged. He had already messed up. He was keeping score and he was losing in the game. And we want to make sure that Peter knows he's really one of those disciples. Peter decides to go fishing. He's kind of lost his way. Jesus finds him, cooks a meal for him, said, do you love me? And when Jesus asked Peter, do you love me? He used the word agape, which is a divine love. In other words, do you agape me? Do you love me with divine love, Peter? And Peter now, he's losing in the game. He's been keeping score. He's way behind. Before all this happened, Peter would have said, yes, I love you, agape. But he can't say it now because he's dealing with all the low road stuff that he's going through. And so he says, Jesus, I phileo you, which is I brotherly love you. It's not a divine love. It's a step beneath it. Do you agape love me? Well, I phileo love you. Do you agape love me? Well, I phileo. And then Jesus realized that Peter felt so inadequate, he couldn't reach up to that agape love. And so what does Jesus do the 3rd time? He goes from agape to phileo. He says, Peter, do you phileo love me? Peter says, yes, I do that. I do that. And then he said, Peter, as you grow older now, you're not going to be in control of your life like you've been in the past. You're going to go places you don't really want to go. And he kind of put a little bit of a future before Peter that wasn't real positive and uplifting. And the Bible says Peter saw John, the disciple that Jesus loved. And what did Pete do? Pete looked at Jesus and he said, what about him? See, he's still keeping score. He's kind of said, I don't mind having a pretty tough life if John has a tough life too. I can handle it if everybody else has to go through what I'm going through. And Jesus said, no. Don't worry about him. You follow me. Wow. Even in the upper room when he was washing feet, when he came to Peter, Peter said, no, you can't wash my feet. Now, why didn't Peter want Jesus to wash his feet? It's very simple. Peter said, you can't wash my feet because you're above me, Jesus. Now, Peter wasn't opposed to having somebody washing his feet. He just didn't want Jesus to do it. Any of the other disciples could wash his feet. You see, he's still keeping score. He's still kind of, where am I in the pecking order of things? You know, when Jesus picked up the basin, only 2 times is the word basin used in the gospel. Pilate picked up the basin and put himself first. Jesus picked up the basin and he put other people first. That's high road leadership. High road leadership is servant leadership. So I just close with this prayer that I wrote. Again, it's my high road prayer. See if you identify with it as I share it with you. Lord, as I grow older, I would like to be known as available rather than a hard worker, compassionate more than competent, content, not driven, generous instead of rich, gentle over being powerful, a listener more than a great communicator, loving versus quick or bright, reliable, not famous, sacrificial instead of successful, self-controlled rather than exciting, thoughtful more than gifted. I want to be a foot washer. That's the high road that Jesus calls all of us to travel. I don't know what you're going to do, but I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow his footsteps because he's my Lord, he's my Savior, he's my Master, and I want to be like him. Thank you very much.